Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome, welcome, welcome. Your Uncle Jim Myers is back with Kidney Stories 2 tonight. And tonight, I have something extra, extra, extra special for you. Richard Knight, the president of the American Association of Kidney Patients, is here with us tonight. The oldest, largest, and most patient-centered organization, kidney advocacy organization in the United States. Let me tell you a little bit about my friend Rich. Richard A. Knight is a former hemodialysis patient who received his kidney transplant approximately 14 years ago. As I said, he is the president of the AAKP and a member of the board of directors of the Mid-Atlantic Regional Coalition. He recently was appointed to the steering committee of the Kidney Precision Project housed at the National Institute of Health, National Diabetes, Digestive, and Kidney Disease Group with the United States government. Mr. Knight has a background in public policy and congressional operations based on both his professional experience on Capitol Hill, where he served in various roles, including communication, policy, and legislative director, as well as his advocacy work as a kidney transplant patient. While working in the United States House of Representatives, Mr. Knight served as a liaison to the Congressional Black Kidney Caucus. Lost my place. Give me a second. And was involved in substantial work with House Energy and Commerce and Small Business Committee. Richard's knowledge of the executive branch of government and procurement policies is based on direct experience with the federal government as a contractor and as a 10-year co-chair of the Baltimore, Washington quarter of the Chamber of Commerce and their annual regional government procurement fair. Mr. Knight received his MBA from the University of Virginia Darden School of Business, his BA from Hampton University. He is a business strategist providing patient engagement and consulting services for healthcare organizations and businesses developing tools designed to leverage patient input and preferences in their care plans and quality measures. He's also been a small business owner. He is heavily involved in business and education issues through multiple executive networks in the Washington, D.C. region. He serves as an adjunct professor at Bowie State University. He is a founding member of BSU's College of Business Advisory Council. Please give a warm welcome to our good friend, president of the American Association of Kidney Patients. This is Richard Knight with us tonight. Richard, how are you?
I'm doing well. Listen, thank you for that introduction. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well deserved. Well deserved. Glad you're here with us. I want to talk to you a little bit about your kidney story, and then I want to get right into the things that the AAKP that they're up to right now. So let's start right off with the top. You have suffered from kidney failure. What caused your kidneys to failure?
High blood pressure, hypertension.
Okay, and one of the issues that I know that I've heard you discuss with our friend Kent Bressler on his show, shameless plug, Kent's Kidney Stories, the owner and operator of Kidney Solutions, was the advice that you got before you went on dialysis. Can you tell us a little bit about that story? And in particular, I'm interested in whether you were ever advised about preemptive kidney transplant.
Well, let's begin with the end. No, I was never advised about a preemptive kidney transplant. And unfortunately, like many others, I crashed into dialysis. I was under the care of a primary care physician. I was receiving medication for my high blood pressure. It didn't work. And one of the things that we have to deal with, and I found out after the fact, is that many times we aren't properly diagnosed by a primary care physician. And let me say this, it's a very difficult disease to manage. Primary care physicians are doing a lot of things. They're talking with people covering a lot of different areas. And many of them would just miss this because otherwise I was fairly healthy. And it first started back in 1996 when I went to get some life insurance, but I could not. I could not because I had protein in my urine. Now, after the fact, and I read it, it burned in my mind a hole, just stuck in my mind when I read the statement that protein in your urine is a clear indication of impending kidney failure. But my doctor told me, well, the insurance companies won't give you insurance if you have that. And it's just, something that they do. I said, was there a cause? Can I take a pill? Can I get rid of it? I clearly remember him not mentioning anything with respect to kidneys. That was in 1996. In 2004, I ended up on dialysis. So it took several years, but the point that I want to make is that if we identify this disease early enough and with purpose, we can slow the progression. We can educate the patient. Then we can talk about one of the options, which is a preemptive transplant. The key is going upstream. So what I say to people is, and I'm going to say this, I don't blame the doctors. That's on me. I didn't know enough. I did not do it. I didn't learn enough about the disease. And because I was fairly healthy, I continued on with my merry way. And you and I both know that the kidneys can last until they're approximately 15% functional, which means that they can last through 85% as they degenerate and lose their functionality. So that's why I crashed into dialysis. And that's part of what motivated me to do some of the things that I do now.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask, because, there's always that come to Jesus sort of thing that goes on with us kidney advocates, where something in your life happens. And that's the turning point when you actually begin to educate yourself and you realize that, you have a responsibility then to educate others. So yeah. I wanted to point that out to our young advocates, that you guys aren't the only ones that have had these feelings. And, please, if you have questions, contact one of us that are more experienced, and we're always happy to help out. Where did you start dialysis? Where were you placed?
I was placed I live out in Maryland, so I went to a place that was in Lanham, Maryland, about 10 minutes away from my house. I lived in New Carrollton, Maryland, and it was one of the LDOs, a DaVita facility. And, and the interesting thing is, I clearly remember this being in the hospital. You read in my bio that I was chair of a procurement fair done by the Baltimore Washington Corridor Chamber. I had a procurement fair going on when I was supposed to be released, but they had not found a facility to place me, so they wouldn't let me out. And that really, I worked hard on that. And, of course, you want to get it on with your life. They started dialysizing me in the hospital with the catheter in my neck. And I was just ready to go. If I got to go, let's go to a facility and let's get it on. But I really wanted to get out to the hospital and try to get back to as normal a life as one could.
Okay. Talk to us a little bit about your involvement in the community, your employment pre-dialysis, because I understand your facility was very flexible with your schedule. So I want to indicate to people, just how busy you really were.
Well, fortunately for me, and I think it's very, very important that folks take care of themselves physically. Fortunately for me, while I was on dialysis, 2004, my son was 14. I was president of a Boys and Girls Club. I was coaching a soccer team. I was on the board at the Baltimore Washington Corridor Chamber of Commerce. I was co-chair of that procurement fair. I was on the board of directors at my son's school. And I was running my own business. I had my own business where I did government contracting. That allowed me to, I always tell people, that allowed me great flexibility in that I could work either the first 12 or the second 12 hours of the day. Now, I didn't work those long hours when I was on dialysis, but I did work 6 to 8 hours a day, along with doing all the other things, because they just required me to go to meetings, to sit down, and nothing very, very strenuous. But because I had that flexibility, if they had a slot at the first shift, which started around 6:30, they would call me. Take me about 10 minutes. If somebody didn't come in, the shift started at 6:30, I could be there in 15 minutes. So they would call me. My shift was at 3:30 in the afternoon.
Okay. How long were you on dialysis altogether?
A little bit over 2 years.
Okay. So you received a kidney transplant. Tell us the story, how that came about. How was it that, what was your search for a kidney like?
Well, it was before the days of all the wondrous things that you do on Facebook, where you help people get kidneys, and that's a great service that you provide. And I want to thank you for that. Mine was about going out and educating people. A, most people don't know that you can live on one kidney. And B, people have no idea what to do besides feel sorry for you and think that you're going to die. And as one friend told me, you don't look sick. I said, well, I'm not sick. I'm just on dialysis. Well, what does that mean? That means I have to go sit on a machine for 4 hours a day, 3 times a week. They said, you're kidding. I said, no. And it so happened that I was on the board at this chamber, and a friend of mine was chair of the board. And she was out. The ladies were out strategizing, drinking, or whatever it was they were doing. And she shared with the person who gave me, who donated the kidney, that I was on dialysis. And she said, Rich seems like a nice guy. I wouldn't mind giving him a kidney. And she said, we ought to tell him. I'll never forget, that was February 2006. She came up to me at our fundraiser and said she would give me a kidney. And you get excited, but the reality is, when you understand the amount of due diligence that they have to go through, the testing, it gives you pause, because you just can't pass the test just like that. If you have a hint of being diabetic, if you're overweight, if you have some other issues, you're not going to pass the test. But she did. Mind you, now that was in February of 2006, and my transplant didn't happen until October of 2006. She changed jobs and had to wait until she accumulated some time, which is one of the reasons why we support the Living Donor Protection Act.
Okay, and I promise you, we're going to talk about that tonight. I promise.
Yeah.
Okay. What was this heroine's name?
Jamie Costas.
Oh, big thank you to her. Thank you for donating.
Absolutely. Jamie, I apologize, because I should have sent you an email so you could be watching us this evening. But she is active on Facebook, and we do keep in touch.
Well, you send her an email, because I promise there'll be an instant replay.
Okay.
So there's lots of folks that watch the show after the fact, Rich. So
good.
Probably more of them after the fact than actually during the showtime period. So it's been kind of surprising to me, but that's the way it works.
Okay.
And just one more shameless plug before I continue. Our friend Jarrett and his brother that's producing the show tonight, they also work with people that are trying to find a kidney donor, and they do a pretty good job. They're pretty innovative with the things that they post, and they help Steve out with the outreach network here. So we want to do a shameless plug for the Brown brothers too, while we're
no question. And Jarrett is known for his tremendous special effects. Yeah.
Yeah, he makes
as the viewers know from watching
even
the
though I'm
program. So yeah, that's great.
All right. So where were you transplanted? What facility?
Washington Hospital Center.
Good.
And again, I even did the research for that. When I was in dialysis, I had to share with my nephrologist that we're going to look at the Washington Hospital Center. They've got a very strict criteria, as opposed to Johns Hopkins or University of Maryland. And I said, now, Johns Hopkins would be good for your patient over there. Where are you getting this information? I said, it's all online. And you have to match yourself. I said, I'm fairly healthy. So they had for example, you couldn't be overweight. You couldn't be diabetic. They had a very high success rate because they had a very high standard and criteria for those that they were going to select to do a transplant. Johns Hopkins, on the other hand, would be more aggressive. And they would say, for example, if somebody was diabetic, if somebody was a little overweight, and at the time, Dr. Montgomery at Johns Hopkins began doing transplants between people with different blood types. So he was a pioneer in that. So Washington Hospital Center, great facility. Dr. White did me and did the surgery. Legendary.
Excellent.
Jimmy Light. Forgive me, I misspoke, but his name was Dr. Jimmy Light.
Thank you. I understand from what I've read and from what you've told us, your transplant to date has lasted approximately 14 years. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Oh man, we're not worthy. We're not worthy. Your Uncle Jim, 4 years, wonders how he got this far.
And as we know, Kent, 33 years. So
33,
that's what we're shooting for.
Preemptive living transplant from his brother Kip. So if you haven't heard that story, we've talked to Kent on the show too. You know, the replays of our show are available on YouTube under the Outreach Urban Media Network. So check it out if you haven't heard from Kent before, because it's a pretty cool story. So, all right, let's talk AAKP, Rich.
All right.
Why belong to the AAKP? Where can I join? What are the perks to membership? How much does it cost? And Jarrett, we need the link.
Well, I'm going to say this. Put away your checkbook because the membership is free. We did away with that. We don't want there to be any barriers to entries to join our organization. And the other things, and I didn't find out about AAKP until after I got out of the dialysis facility. Education and advocacy. We want to help you help yourself. So as you know, we have a lot of different venues to educate, regardless of where you are along the kidney spectrum. If you're pre-dialysis, CKD 2, 3, we have information for you. If you're on dialysis, and if you have a transplant, you know, information from proper diet to taking care, or what is the process to get a transplant? What is the process for selecting a good doctor? How do you join a support network? All those things, the little things that you may not think about. Information for caregivers, so that your family, friends, or if you have a specific caregiver, can know what to do. So, and why you should join? The biggest reason to join is that we're engaged collectively as patients to help ourselves. Patients have a perspective, and we talk about things being done in the best interest of the patients. Many things are done in business, and I bear no ill will to them, but what may be in the best interest of their business may not necessarily be in the best interest of the patient. And we've gotten to the point now in the United States, we've got some pretty smart patients who understand the system. And as I tell people, most of the issues that we have are not healthcare issues. They're management and strategy issues. We can do much better than what we do. And a lot of that has to do with priorities, how the system works, how to gain access to the system, and making investment in dollars and spending the money in a little bit different fashion. For example, and we all like to operate under the umbrella of the executive of the president's executive order that really puts the emphasis on what's best for the patients. And one of the first goals is to increase the number of transplants and to increase the number of patients that have access to home dialysis. In order to do that, you've got to identify the issue further upstream. So that's number one. We have to work with the primary care folks, doctors, good people, but we need to work with them so that we can do a better job of identifying this disease further upstream. Then there's a whole possibility of things that can be done. And I'll get back to AAKP because that's what we talk about. We educate you about that. I've told many a patient, if you're going to have if you feel your creatinine level increase and your kidneys are fading, you've got brothers and sisters and cousins, and you approach your doctor about a preemptive transplant and that's something he says is off the table, and you say, why? Well, that's just not something that I do. Well, you need to get another doctor because it's about what's best for you as a patient. Now, if he's done the test work, and note I said explore the possibility. I didn't say you had to do it. I said explore, and that's a lot of what we're about. Let's look at the possibility. Instead of saying, no, what we normally do is wait for you to go on dialysis and then you pursue a transplant. And the question is why? If you have brothers or sisters that will be willing to donate an organ to you and are found to be a match. That's orientation. And that's something that is more or less, and that's part of a strategy. Why should you have to go? Somebody said, well, you only on dialysis for 2 years? I said, let me see. Why don't you come over here and let me put a nail in your arm? Well, they use needles. No, it's actually more like a nail that's hollowed with a beveled edge. And let's see if it hurts. Or you stick it in your arm. People just don't know. So, we got to try to educate them. But back to AAKP, as you know, we've been around since 1969. It was one of our patients that rolled out on the floor, 50th anniversary, +1, rolled out on the floor of the House Ways and Means Committee. And subsequent to that, after they said, what is this patient doing? Well, this is what these kidney patients have to do. Shortly after that, with some additional advocating, Richard Nixon signed the law that allowed dialysis to be covered by Medicare.
In 1972.
That's right. And
you're graduated from high
think
school.
about that. Now, we've made progress, but not enough since 1972. The most significant change, and as I tell people, we don't care who's in office, Republican, Democrat, we don't care. We're going to work with them in the best interest of our patients. And the fact is that President Trump issued the executive order, the American
Kidney and Health Initiative.
Yeah, AAKH. I always have to use the acronyms to remind myself of it. But that is the most significant change in the kidney space since the signing of the bill to have it covered by Medicare. And what it does, it totally revolutionizes and most importantly changes the mindset and more closely aligns payment with treatment that's best for the patient. And that's very rare. You and I both know sometimes we'll talk with a doctor and they say, well, we don't get paid for that. And we're kind of shaking our head. You don't get paid for it.
Because people don't understand. We're all volunteers. You're a volunteer. I'm a volunteer.
That's right.
Kent's a volunteer. All that going to Washington, meeting with members of Congress, of that online stuff. We do that for free, not because we're getting paid. We do it because we love it. We do it because we want to inform our fellow patients. Mm-hmm. We want to inform the public. We want you to be kidney aware. That's right.
That's right. And now what you guys are doing, a shameless plug for you guys. You guys are doing a great job. Steve Belcher and the crew, Jared, yourself, communicating.
Steve is absolutely
in part of our strategy, I'm going to say this tonight. If you happen to be in a dialysis facility, I want you to reach out to AAKP. You need to join. You need to have access to the information that's going to allow you to be in better control of your situation.
Absolutely.
Because I would be remiss if I didn't say when I was at DaVita, they took great care of me. There are no negatives there. So, but the fact is that many of the larger organizations have a business model, and that business model causes them to do things that aren't necessarily in the best interest, which is why the executive order causes them to go upstream. They do a great job of dialysizing, but when it comes to going upstream, when it comes to helping you get that transplant, without the proper incentives, which are in the executive order, if one of their patients gets a transplant, then they'll be reimbursed for it. People used to say I was silly when I would say, well, if the primary care physicians aren't doing a good job, pay them. Give them a bonus. That's crazy. That's their job. I said, well, it's not getting done if you pay them. And again, I'm never going to make anybody out in the healthcare industry, the healthcare professional, out to be a villain. We need to understand that what they do is function within a system. and they have to follow the rules of engagement that are laid down in the system. It's our job to make the changes. That's what we have to do. That's
Right.
another reason why you join AAKP. But let me let you get a question, Jim, since it's your show.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit. And just so you know, the links have been scrolling underneath, and all of the advantages to joining the AAKP and the things that you get when you join up, those have all been scrolling underneath while you're talking too.
Great.
So talk to us a little bit about some of the AAKP educational programs, initiatives, important meetings. You know, some of the, you mentioned the dialysis patients, some of the things that we're doing for kidney patients.
Oh, sure. Well, you know, we have our annual events. And one of the annual events, for example, we have is a global summit. And there, you know, the focus is on, we have a global reach. And this year, the focus was primarily on innovations in COVID-19. COVID-19 has brought about a lot of innovations. How do we handle it? What's best for the patient? What's going on there? And so we had a tremendous session. We do that in concert with George Washington University, great host. And they also provide great leaders over there. Dr. Raj, who's headed the nephrology department over there, and many of the other presenters. And he's also instrumental in getting us speakers from overseas. So that's a relationship we've had. We've had the second one, and it's been very, very successful. Then in June, typically, we do a policy summit. In that policy summit this year, what we did is we more or less did a report out on what is the status of the implementation of the executive order approximately 1 year afterwards. Because I'm going to get into my management bag here, because anytime you want to create change, there's going to be resistance to it. And even though the proposed executive order and the changes in there are in the best interest of the patient, there are many of those who want to maintain the status quo. It's just easier to function that way. So we took a deep dive look at where we were with respect to the policies that were going on, that related to the executive order. And we wanted to make certain that we could let it be known of our support for the executive order. They had to take it back and they had to tweak a couple of the models, which they've done, and they're out now, particularly the main one that relates to how nephrologists can be compensated and how the patient should be treated, with respect to earlier identification, even the push towards innovation. And so those are all aspects that we talked about during the policy summit. And we had some tremendous speakers there. And we really developed that into something that a lot of people like, particularly in the industry. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, it's our annual patient meeting. Now, I want to say this. We normally do those face-to-face, but this year and next year, virtual. And the virtual platforms that we've used have been very good. We've invested a lot of time and effort, and we're thankful for our sponsors who have allowed us to do that. And we don't charge. I wanted to go to a session the other day on Medicare Advantage, and it cost $300. I said, huh? What planet are you from? I saw something else that cost $900. So, no. We want to make certain that whatever we do, people can afford to come to it, patients in particular, and we allow everyone else to come in. That's why we work hard, and we're fortunate to have industry partners that will help us, defray the cost so that we can take care of the patients.
Okay. Let me mention a couple of initiatives that the AAKP does. One of the things that we have going on is we have an initiative for veterans. All right. If you're in the service, you have kidney disease, you have kidney issues, we have an initiative for that. If you're a parent, a mom, a dad, a caretaker, we have an initiative for pediatric kidney patients as well. So just a couple of things to throw out, Rich, for comment that the AAKP does. If you're seeking a kidney, if you're on dialysis, if you're transplanted, we have an initiative. We have a great educational storage of webinars, written materials, all sorts of things for COVID-19. I'm going to ask Rich about that in a minute. One other thing that you should know, a lot of organizations have claimed that they were the first to have a virtual event. We were the first. Our fun walk last year was a virtual event, and that was before all this COVID stuff. Okay, it was a virtual event, so you could walk anywhere. You know, like I walked on the walking path by my apartment. You know, I walked 12 miles last year for the AAKP. I'm not sure I could do that again this year. It's not even shot, but I walked 12 miles virtually last year.
And mention one of our most important initiatives, just scroll on the bottom, is the voting initiative.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Register, and we don't tell people how to vote, but we want them to vote. That's very important. And that also helps us out, because when we go talk to a legislator up on Capitol Hill, they know that we will vote. We will respond. And one thing legislators do is they count. They can count the numbers. And as we have a growing organization, growing members, to the extent that we're all signed up and we vote, that makes it very impactful when we go up on Capitol Hill.
37 million of us have chronic kidney disease. They estimate that there may be as high as 90 million people total in the United States that have no idea they have CKD, but you know, they're in the process of development. So we're a large block of voters we have to be reckoned with.
That's right. That's right. And the other thing too is that if you don't participate in the process, if you sit around and sulk, why me? Well, why not you? This is what happens. And I tell people, you know, there's two significant things that happened to me in my life. Well, there's some other things, but with respect to this conversation, one was when I was in college playing basketball and my knees went. I couldn't play anymore. After my freshman year, it made me get focused on my studies. I tell people that was the best thing that happened to me in college. I wasn't going pro, but it made me change my focus. The other thing is that losing my kidneys caused me to learn things about myself that I never knew. It allowed me to really dig deep and have to dedicate myself to being a much better person. And quite frankly, I believe that as well as I came through this, I would be remiss if I didn't get out there and help others who are less fortunate. And I think that service to other people is probably the highest calling that we can do. That's why we do what we do, Jim, and we do it for no money. It's the dedication that we both have to try to help make someone else's life better. So I just want people to know and understand that.
Very good, very good. Talking about people that are dedicated to kidney patients and trying to help their fellow kidney patients. Tell us a little bit about the AAKP's ambassador program. What is that all about?
Okay, we have a group of dedicated patients. They want to be a little bit more engaged. They want to be a little bit more involved. So what we have is Erin Kale, who's been with us going on 3.5, close to 4 years now. She developed an ambassador program, and I think we have approximately 160 ambassadors now. And they are the ones that will really lead the rally. They're always at the events, always supporting our initiatives. Folks like Jim Myers, who develops the pediatric newsletter, guys like that, like Kent Bressler, that does his kidney stories and helps shares information, serves on the board, talks about the preemptive transplant and a number of other activities. It's those individuals. They're active. Although we focus on a national level, they keep a pulse of what's going on in the local scene and at the state level. Because, of course, any congressman or congresswoman does have a state to which they occasionally may visit and spend some time there. So we advocate up on Capitol Hill. Now, COVID, when we've done our Hill days, we've continued on. We've just done them virtually. And we've had the similar or greater impact doing it virtually as we did going up there face to face. We've done it with the Renal Physicians Association. We've done it with ASN. I think we've done something with the transplant folks, AST, ASTS. And it's been very effective, very, very powerful as we let our voice be known. So the ambassador program, we have our patients that are most committed. When I tell people about membership and I say, well, you got several options, but if you really want to be involved, you want to take a look at the ambassador program, and I turn them over to Erin, and she'll take them through an orientation process, give them the information. And shortly we will be even adding another level of insight and education that will be available to the ambassadors that will be rolling out, say, over the next 4 to 5 months. So we're real excited about that. And I would say that Roberta Reed is a proud AAKP ambassador
and a good friend,
and always doing something and working on behalf of the patients. I saw Lisa Baxter roll through there earlier, and all my buddies. They're Pennsylvania, up in New York. I'm just sad that I can't go up there and hang out with them as I was able to before COVID, but we're still in touch virtually. And like I said, they're both involved and engaged in the ambassador program, and I really appreciate their participation. So again, we've had a number of people that have gotten excited. They've joined AAKP, and to the extent they want to get more involved, they've joined the ambassador program. That is a program that's going to continue to grow. It's going to really, over the next 12 months, it's going to grow by leaps and bounds, because we've got a lot of interest and a lot of patients are signing up. Go ahead, Jim. Back to you.
One other thing I want to point out about that program, we do not limit ourselves to ambassadors in the United States only. If you're from a foreign country, like we have ambassadors from India, we have ambassadors from Ireland, many foreign countries. We want you to be involved. We want to exchange ideas internationally about how different countries are dealing with kidney disease and kidney issues and kidney legislation. So don't think that the AAKP, their ambassador program, is just limited to the United States. You can write Erin as a potential foreign ambassador and get information that will help you. So, and her email address has been scrolling underneath, Rich, just so you know.
That's right. And to answer your point, Jim, when we did the global summit,
correct,
we reached out to participants from 70 countries, 70. And let me tell you something. We are leading the pack in the United States, and there are patients all over the world who want to get engaged with us. And I'm going to say this. There are many organizations. All we do is deal with patients. We are patients. We deal with patients. We focus on patients. There are many other organizations that have patients that belong to them, and that's great. But as I always tell people, patients speak for patients. We don't have other people speaking for patients, and I want to emphasize that. So we're not going to have somebody bring you in a room and start talking, and no, it's patients. And that's important, because you have a perspective, and you should be given the opportunity to sing your song, tell your story, and talk about your perspective. And that's part of what we do with respect to the education process.
But what do they teach us? If you speak directly to your member of Congress and you tell your kidney story, they remember almost 100% of it. If you speak to a health liaison or a member of their staff, they'll remember 70 to 80% of your story. It's your kidney story that persuades members of Congress to act.
That's right. That's right. And they're often moved by it, because believe it or not, there are many of them that have some type of experience, either with a relative, with someone that they know, and in many instances, even a staff person. You'd be surprised.
Oh.
And once you connect on that level, you've got their ear. And again, part of the education process is educating the patients about the different types of legislation. And just because somebody else supports it doesn't mean that we do. I get that question. Why don't you guys support that? I say, because it's not in the best interest of patients. Somebody said it is. Well, yeah, but they're not a patient. So they might have told you that. But when you really look at the legislation, it's not. And we're not going to support it.
Rich, what do members of the board of directors do? What is that all about?
Well, the board, obviously, they're the ones that help us set the policy, come up with these ideas, help us roll it out, responsible for taking a look at the budget and how we manage the organization, because we do have a decent amount of funds that come in. And I always tell people, well, just because you disagree with me, I'm not mad at you. People have a chance to have input, let their voice. And you know what? When you have more people engaged, you have a lot more ideas. And we have a balanced board. Of course, our board is always going to be made up of a majority of patients. That's how we're designed.
Okay, and one thing I want to say to the audience about the board of directors and the AAKP, if you have an idea or a thought or an initiative that you think is important and it fits within the goal of helping kidney patients, you can bring that up, and the guys on the board, the guys on the executive board will listen to that. If they like it, they'll go with it. They'll tell you, do it, go with it. And we're not talking about a matter of months or years to make a decision. That happens awful quickly.
That's right.
And I personally have experienced that. My friend Kent Bressler personally has experienced that. Our friend Dave White has personally experienced that. Those are all examples of initiatives that were started by members of the board of directors, by members of the AAKP, by our ambassadors. So
right.
Your voice gets heard in this organization. And that's one of the things I love about it the most.
Yeah, and we have a diverse board. We have a talented board. We have several doctors that belong to our board. We talk about some heavy-duty healthcare things. We're patients, we're not doctors. We have a doctor, Janice Lee, who is on the board. She's a nephrologist out of Emory University. I mean, she manages dialysis facilities at Emory, but she's always there and available. And I always ask her, Janice, she said, I'll let you know when you put too much on me. So she has been
Dr. Johnston?
She has been a godsend to the organization. We have a Dr. Barry Smith, who just joined our board. Doug Johnson, who's president of DCI, Dialysis Clinic Inc.
Yeah, runs a whole bunch of dialysis centers and does it properly.
When you move
with the interest of the kidney patient heart.
He's got the largest, but they're nonprofit. Their focus is a little bit different. So we've got a good blend of talent. We have a medical advisory board that has some of the top nephrologists in the country. And I just spoke with Dr. Steve Fadem and a couple of guys on the executive committee, Paul Conway. And I said, listen, we got to make better use of our medical advisory board. Talented people. And so we began to engage them a little bit more. And again, a bunch of volunteers for some of the top people in the industry for years and always available to help us.
Okay. You've mentioned COVID a couple of times, and we're going to have the link stream by for where people can get information about the AAKP on COVID-19 and some of the things that the AAKP has done. Could you give us a little bit of an example about the webinars, the things that have been written, the stuff that people can access on YouTube? That link will go out also too, Rich, so people see it about COVID-19, because the AAKP is down with this, man. I mean, we've done a lot, and we want you to know about it.
Okay, we've done a series of webinars related to COVID and kidney. The COVID-19 and kidney patients, which we've done several times, updated by one of our good friends and colleagues who's a doctor at CDC. And again, the information is changing so fast. We've had her come out and talk several times. We've talked about COVID and transplant patients. Get the facts. Several of the folks, we were fortunate to have, the president at the time of AST and ASTS, Dr. Bloomberg and Dr. Ratner come out and give a great webinar on the state of transplantation during the height of COVID. And it just, information. Now, we've also talked about the veterans. What programs do they have? You mentioned the Veterans Health Initiative that we had. So we had the VA come out and gave a tremendous presentation on what resources are available and what they're doing to assist the veterans. We've had mental health. Someone once said to me, well, Richard, my sister's on dialysis and she's depressed. I said, well, here's a tip. Everybody on dialysis is depressed. And the fact that we have COVID going on right now, think about this. You're more susceptible to this disease than others. If you go to an in-center dialysis facility, you have the added stress of the normal things that happen there, of the possibility of catching this virus that if you do catch it could kill you. That's going to lead not just to depression, but to anxiety. So we had one of our good friends, social worker at Network 5, Renee Bovis-Collis, come out and talk on that topic. And she gave a tremendous presentation. Acknowledge some of your anxiety. Find someone to talk to. And again, as you're scrolling down the bottom, all those are available on our YouTube page. Then we also talked about what I believe is one of the most important issues that we can deal with, is nutrition. Nutrition. So much of how you respond to something is based on what you put into your body. There's certain foods that you should eat, certain foods that you should not eat. And we've had nutritionists come on, and I mean, I'm blown away at the amount and level of information that they have, and educate us about reading labels when you go into the store to actually understand what is in some of these things that you're buying, what not to buy, what to buy, things like that. We've had a number of webinars. I think we've had close to 10 or even more that focus on COVID, and we continue to update those. One thing that I recommend to all the patients, I'm just going to say it flat out, stop watching the news. When somebody tells you they follow the science, well, they're not following the science. I hate to say that they politicize this thing so much. And some of the information that people are giving you is good information, but it may be demonized by someone. I had a group of doctors that came out and said something, and they just cut them off. And as we go further along, what they're talking about turned out to be true. So go to the website, and we don't just have our webinars, but when you go to the website, we have links to the various government agencies, whether it be the CDC, whether it be the FDA, and other agencies that can give you trusted information about this disease, about resources, and other information. So you don't have to sit there and listen to what they're telling you on television. That I'm just saying, it's just not in the best interest of patients, of people who are very vulnerable population. They'll have you scared to death, and they take information from the CDC and put it on TV, and people go crazy accusing them based on who presented the information. But it's the same information, so be very careful about the information. And if you have a question, send us, and we'll try to get an answer to your question if you have a technical question about yourself and COVID. But Jim, I hope that covered it, and we're going to continue providing webinars as this virus goes on. There's a lot of changes that are taking place, and we want our people. We even talked about COVID and going back to school. We had a session on that. So right. We really try to cover the lay of the land. We've talked about telemedicine, which is very big during COVID, because why should you have to go into a doctor's office? If you're involved in a clinical trial, is it really necessary for you to go in? So we want to make certain that you take all the precautions, as many as possible. And we want to make certain that for example, the nephrologist can be properly compensated if they engage in telemedicine versus you having to go into the office just so they can get a different reimbursement rate. So CMS has been responsive to that. There's a lot of people doing some good things for patients, and sometimes that message doesn't always get out there.
Okay. Let me ask a question about a couple pieces of legislation that are near and dear to our hearts.
Certainly.
The immunosuppressive drug bill and the Living Donor Protection Act. What kinds of things are the AAKP doing about kidney legislation?
Well, again, that's where we really stand out through our social media, through our ambassadors visiting their respective representatives and letting them know that we support this legislation. Immunity suppressive legislation, we are as close to that as we've ever been. I attended the committee meeting, and Dr. Burgess read into the record the letter that AAKP signed along with AST and ASTS. And it came out of that committee, and now we're trying to get them to move forward on that.
American Society of Transplantations.
Yeah, American Society of Transplant Surgeons. Sorry for the acronyms there. Bad habit.
No worries.
And with respect to the Living Donor Protection Act, if we get people to step forward and donate an organ, we want to make certain that there's not negative pushback, for example, from the insurance companies and others. For example, if you donate a kidney, you're going to take a number of tests, and you will not be able to donate that kidney unless you're very healthy and the doctors believe that you donating that kidney won't harm you. However, if you go to get insurance after that, you have a tough time and you may not be able to get it. I'm talking about life insurance or disability insurance. You can get health insurance, but life insurance, if you're working, if you're a husband or wife working, that's something important.
Long-term care.
Absolutely, long-term care, disability. The fact of the matter is, if you compare someone who has donated a kidney, their help, to the regular population, then you're going to find that these people who donate the organs are much healthier, or else they wouldn't have passed the test. So the reasons for them not being able to get the insurance. So the Living Donor Protection Act puts some rules in place that will protect that donor, because we don't want to penalize someone for making that ultimate gift of life. And again, that legislation has taken hold in many states, but not yet passed at the federal level. And the unfortunate thing about legislation, in many instances, it moves very slow. But we're going to stay at it. We're going to continue. We're going to continue going forward till we can get it done and we get over the finish line.
Okay. I promised you when we were off air that I would give you an opportunity to talk about kidneys and the disparity in healthcare based on race and ethnicity and what the AAKP is doing about it. And specifically, I read an article that you wrote on Juneteenth about disparities in healthcare. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, disparities in healthcare have been around for a while. Obviously, COVID-19 has simply magnified. And so now we have more patients. For example, I live in Prince George's County, 61% African American. We have close to 30,000 cases here. We have over 25% of the COVID cases in the state of Maryland, one county out of 24. Now, when you have that level of cases, it seems to me, I don't know, like you ought to have more resources geared that way. Sometimes I have to wonder what motivates people, but again, and there's other factors. I don't want to make light of it, Jim, because it's very serious. You tend to have, because of the employment situation, you will have people living together in multi-generation houses, son, father, mother, grandparents. If that son goes out to work and comes back in, there's a high probability or a chance of passing that on either to the mother, father, certainly to the grandparents. African Americans make up 12 to 13% of the workforce, but represent 31% of those in transportation positions, taxi drivers, bus drivers, positions like that where you have exposure, mail carriers, people who work at restaurants. So these are the frontline positions that just cause a higher degree of exposure. Then you superimpose that on the fact that there's something that we call social determinants of health, where there may be. I was listening to the news one morning, and they were thinking about shutting down a bus line because of lack of traffic on it in Baltimore. And one guy was saying, "Well, if they shut that bus line down, I won't be able to get over to the hospital to visit my wife who's in the hospital for something." And that's one of the things that we're talking about, lack of transportation. Now, it seems that the individuals that are impacted by this the most get the least resources. And the one thing that COVID has done, and some of the other social unrest that's going on in the country right now, I think have caused people to take a new look at some of the systematic racism or bias that may be occurring that we need to deal with. Because the reality is that everyone should have a chance to have equal access to health care. And as an organization, we're doing a lot, but we have to do more. We have to do more. Listen, my executive committee, and with Ed Hickey, Paul Conway, these guys are sitting down and we're writing articles and coming up with ideas, and very sensitive to the situation that's out here, along with Dan, who's the current secretary. So we've got a very engaged, a very concerned executive committee along with the board, and we're working with a number of other people coming up with strategies that we can use. That's why I'm adamant about getting more access to individuals who are in dialysis facilities. Many of the people in dialysis facilities in Washington, D.C., and I'm not talking about over at GW, I'm talking about in Washington, D.C., in Southeast Washington, and other places like that, up in Baltimore, that Steve is always pointing the camera at. I need to talk to them. These are the ones that I want to talk to, because these are the ones that are getting the least information. And the reality is sometimes they're not getting the optimum assistance and help.
Okay. Rich, we're pushing the clock a little bit here. I have one question I want to ask you that a number of my kidney friends have asked me. It's about the American Kidney Health Initiative, the president's executive order of July 2019. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions that I'm asked over and over again, and I know you and I have discussed this privately, but I want our kidney friends to know, what happens if Biden wins the election in November to the initiative? What is the AAKP doing reference the Biden camp?
Well, we're going to make certain that there's some continuity, because again, now we know that this is an executive order, but here's the good news. The good news is that this disease impacts everybody, regardless of party. And just like we worked with the Obama administration, and that we were instrumental in pulling together the Transplant Organ Summit, that really laid the groundwork for some of the things that have shown up in the executive order. That is certainly what we will communicate to the Biden administration. And remember now, we have a lot of friends on both sides of the aisle. We don't pay particularly. We don't play the party politics. You know, we don't go after somebody because they're this party, or not go after somebody. We're doing what's in the best interest of patients. I have many friends who may disagree with me politically, but I will turn around and say, listen, when it comes to kidney work, if you need something, you give me a call. And if I can help you out, I'm going to help you out. And I think everyone throughout our organization, I'm blown away at the level of camaraderie and family. And you've been to our national patient meetings. So, you know, we talk about the issue of disparities, and that's very important. But we will always make certain that the entire patient population is taken care of. And Jim, I want to say I appreciate you giving me a chance to come on and talk with the people tonight, share some information, and we'll have to do this again so we can give you an update. the best is yet to come. We've got a lot going on. We've got, not talking about myself, but we've got tremendous leadership within this organization. And folks like yourself, Kent, other board members, executive committee, and we're bringing on some new people. We have some young people, you know, Jennifer Jones, my good friend Sharon, who does the support groups. And let me just give one quick plug here, because I've been on the support group with yourself and Kent. I'm going to encourage people to develop support groups. I think that that's critical avenue to give people a chance to talk. Some people that may not necessarily be talkers, they can listen and they can learn. And then when you get comfortable, you can ask your questions. But it's an opportunity for people to, if you happen to live alone, I live alone.
Me too.
Talking with a bunch of students all the time and always talking with other age. But I'm talking about others besides ourselves who may live alone. You get on the phone and you reach out to people in the Zoom session on a support group. It really, really will lift your spirits. And you've got a lot to contribute. So I just wanted to give a plug for that, because I find when I come out and talk with the guys and the ladies on the support groups that you and Ken are doing, it's exciting listening to them. Always happy to hear of somebody getting a transplant, what someone is going through, and their stories. I've talked with the groups in Florida, the one here in Washington, out in Temple Hills, Maryland, where we have people from all around the country coming on that one, from Seattle, Washington to Arizona. It's just great, man. And I learn a lot because I want to know what patients think, what they want. I don't want to talk to the Jim Myers. You know what's going on.
See, that's why we're so fortunate to have you as our president, because you want to know what's going on with the folks, and
that's right,
what real kidney patients are concerned about. And I do want to say, Kent and I have a support group. We do Zoom meeting every Monday and Thursday. If you need more information about it, drop me a line, drop Kent Bressler a line. Richard shows up without fail, and he always listens to the things that the kidney patients have to say. Most of Kent's patients are kidney patients that are seeking transplant, but we have other people too, liver transplant, lung transplant, all sorts of folks. People as far away as from Ireland. Our friend Colin.
That's right, Colin.
From Ireland. So, everybody's welcome. All you have to do is let us know you're interested. But the thing I love about Rich is that, he'll show up, he'll listen, he'll give advice, but he is interested in what you have to say. He is interested in what kidney patients have to say. And that's what our organization is all about. We definitely want to serve the kidney patient. That's the bottom line. Everything revolves around what is best for the kidney patient. Rich, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and answering questions. I didn't get to everything. I'll have to have you back.
You can schedule me again whenever time allows it. I know you got a lot of people to get to. You got a lot of good people there. So I'm happy to be able to contribute to the Urban Health Outreach Media family.
Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, you have a good night. And thank you so much, Rich, for taking time. This is the only president of a major organization that has agreed to come on and talk to us about kidney patients since Dr. Kramer. And it doesn't mean that I haven't asked. I have. So
it's all good.
Much appreciated.
All right.
Everybody have a good night. And your Uncle Jim will be chatting with you soon. We've got people lined up all the way through the first of the year. So, all right, have a good evening and take care.